This video pertains to a pinwheel experiment that took place on September the 1st, 2022. So this experiment occurred, this is the first experiment that occurred after I came back from Scotland. While we were in Scotland, the blink camera activated a few times, but at no time did it capture the pinwheel moving. There was a time when it captured all kinds of anomalous lights which were fluctuating, but the pinwheels, as far as documenting their movement, that's been very meager in the past month. And when I returned, I checked on the cameras and they seemed to be functioning properly. The blink camera seemed to be functioning okay. They activated whenever I entered into the room. And then the day before this experiment, we did have one activation, which it documented Lefty making a quarter turn in 10 seconds. So as far as the documentation is concerned, there's been very, very little in the last month and a half or so. So the temperature on September 1st during our next meeting should not have been a factor. The indoor temperature was 77, outdoor temperature was 79, so there's not much temperature difference, and the weather is not that unusual. The camera, the daily observations of the pinwheels have revealed that they were been still. They were observed to be still at 1856. Then I set up the camera, and the blink camera is activated whenever there's motion in the room. They seem to be functioning properly. And here's the last camera check to make sure the sound is okay. There's a slight amount of movement here of Lefty, which is typical for when I'm in the room. Then after I left the room, then the pinwheels were observed to be still at 7:14, 7:15, and they were still when the meeting began at 7:30. Then after about 15 minutes or so, I observed that there was some motion, and then about 10 minutes later, there's enough motion I was pretty sure the blink cameras should have been activated, but they weren't. So I got my wife's iPad and I began making a video documenting the activity that was going on that seemed to be associated with a lot of movement. So here I videotaped two dialogues of Heather talking about communicating with her deceased mother. And so here's the second of those videos.
She is way there. You know, and it's not in my head. So, I'm not going to go do a fucking experiment to see if that's my mom. You know what I mean? You know? Right? I know it's my mom.
Yeah, you don't need to do experiments with that one.
Right? Huh? It's one of those things you don't know.
When you were talking about her before, then the pinwheel's going around, now it's going around now. It's those two times is the main time when it's turned. I don't know that it activated it, but...
That's interesting.
So you notice the speed is not continuous, it varies, it changes over time. So then later, Heather talking about her heart condition and her contracting COVID. So it seems that whenever there's emotional content, that seems to
shadows of shit on the ground, brokenness like that.
trigger the pinwheels.
So my heart was showing up on this instrument as the leader of the thing, or the teacher said, well, let's just make sure her body, that her circulation is okay around her heart, so she doesn't have another heart attack. Because I had one in 2017, right? And I got back to Minnesota and I was positive for SARS-CoV. That makes me get a little bit choked up with tears because I started taking a supplement for circulation before I got back. So I was high on the risk of the COVID people because of that heart attack.
So we've been noticing there seems to be a correlation between emotion-laden discussion and discussion of paranormal experiences and paranormal theory. So these are example cases that fit that.
So wild too.
Whole different ball game.
Yep, it is.
But that's one of the things I'm really interested in is paranormal stuff, and like people dealing with trauma and crisis, and like that paranormal discussion. That's the one I want to have. Like what do those traumas conjure? Okay.
Yeah.
Being witnessed for those folks, what are they talking about when it comes to paranormal activity and poltergeists, and what's their discussion of phenomena? They must have who's listening? They must have some we all have, you know what I mean? I don't know. I think about that a lot. People.
There's a deep connection between trauma and psychic phenomena, that's for sure. Death and accidents.
Okay. And miraculous intervention and angelic encounters and the unexplainable experiences, even.
Well, yeah, the adverse child event scale or whatever. There's people that were high on that usually have a lot of psychic stuff too.
Adverse, what's it called?
I can't remember what it's called. The ACEs scale, the adverse child experiences. I think it has to do with like the amount of traumatic events that you experience when during childhood.
Yeah.
You can Google it. It's on
Dissociation.
Yeah. Well, then there's the dissociative experiences.
So the way that I feel it works is that some people, when they use that, they become dissociative. They have a lot of anomalous experiences. They are channeled towards becoming some kind of practitioner.
So yeah, I'm talking about ritual healing theory, where there's a biological component to anomalous experience. Here, so our theory is that emotion-laden discussions seem to trigger the pinwheel, but here's an example case that doesn't really fit that well. Heather's talking about a deodorant, and we laugh a lot about it, and
I accidentally shut off my thing. I don't know whether I captured that the way I wanted to.
This goes on for over 3 minutes, so I won't play the whole thing.
Look at it.
I have something. Talk about Earth
The
Spirit.
nose
This
is
Earth
turning
Spirit
very
is-
strongly.
I found a deodorant that is it's not bad. It's healthy. Your body can handle it, but every single packaging is biodegradable. Biodegradable, recyclable packaging. Earth friendly. Future friendly. Body friendly.
That's hard to find.
Isn't it awesome? It's called Hey Humans.
Hey, humans.
Hey Humans.
I like that.
Recycle me, made from paper. This is made from paper. And
So this goes on for 3 minutes, and we laugh, and Heather even sings a song, so we had a lot of fun. Maybe that's a factor that causes the pinwheel to turn. And here Heather's going to talk about cooking, and we're doing an experiment with this chirping sound. See, when I have my hearing aid in, and then when I talk, it makes a chirping sound, and that in the past that seems to trigger the pinwheel turning. So it's not conclusive, but perhaps there's a relationship.
I don't like it. It's not a pretty sight.
No, yeah, I'm not. Like I said, a little bit of crock pot, but that's kind of warm for that still right now.
You have these people who just love it. They get all into it. They got cookbooks and this kind of oil and that kind of seasoning and that kind of butter and
I do.
this kind of that and that
I got
kind of
cookbooks.
this. I'm like, oh God.
There we go. Phil likes cooking.
Jim likes cooking. Jim,
Oh yeah, I do a lot of cooking.
So you see, when I talk, it activates the
Every time I
chirping.
talk, chirp, chirp, music talk. There it goes. Yeah, I think it likes the echo.
Oh, that's it. Oh.
Yeah.
It does seem to be activated slightly. So after the formal session ended, I turned on the Zoom recording, and the Pinwheel was still very, very active. In fact, this is the most active it's been all evening, was after the formal session ended. So we have the hypothesis that group discussion of psychic experience, paranormal experience, or parapsychological theory, and then in this session we had example cases where we just talked about mundane subjects but laughed. Maybe just the report itself triggers the turning, but it seems that there's just a general overall force. Doesn't even need to have a group. It's a residual force, and it continues after the session ends, and that's in this case is even stronger than anything. The turning is even more stronger than anything previous. And this session was relatively continual turning. There were times when it stopped, but I was just turning on the camera to try to capture the most robust turning, so we get an idea of what we were talking about. But here's an example of the most robust turning, and we're not talking about anything. Maybe there's a kind of Zen lesson involved. So this session was remarkable, as the previous one was, in that we had a lot of pinwheel activity, but the blink cameras didn't activate to capture any of it.
So the time's 21:35. Group session is over, and the pinwheel still going around.
So then at 22:10, I enter the room and I remove the camera, and you'll see, note that Alice inside the plastic container is turning. So I'm not quite sure what explains that. It's more difficult for Alice to turn. Sometimes I think that maybe Alice is just greeting me. Maybe there's some paranormal factor to that turning inside the plastic container. So here's the discussion. For unknown reasons, the blink cameras didn't activate to document the pinwheel turning. And although our discussions may have affected the pinwheel turning, Lefty achieved the most rapid rotation after the formal session ended.